What's good, guys? So today I have for you a DDD deck profile. I know this is a hyped up deck, and ever since the Master Rule 5 revision, everybody wants to try this deck out. Is it meta? Is it good? Is it playable? Because for the last few years where we've had link format, this deck was nearly unplayable. This is one of my favorite decks. This is the deck that brought me into this game. My first deck I ever picked up. I fell in love with this deck, but it just sucked that in link format this deck is almost nearly unplayable. But now we have a link monster from Dual Overload, Gilgamesh, who's crazy. Don't listen to the fucking people telling you that Gilgamesh isn't that good. Don't play Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is actually insane, and it takes this deck into a crazy different route where you can actually have a resource play. But let's get on with the list. I'll explain some new combos. There's definitely a bunch of new combos, and when it comes to this deck, it all depends on your extra deck. There's so many different ways to build this deck, but it all comes down to what kind of boards you want to make this, because this is such a build your own kind of board deck. There's so many different types of boss monsters everybody's going for, but I'll explain why I'm going for the ones I have in this extra deck. But to get on with the list, 3 Ragnarok and 1 Chaos King Apocalypse. Ragnarok's a staple. It's always been a staple. But Chaos King Apocalypse is new, and we have to play Chaos King Apocalypse strictly because of Gilgamesh, because there's a bunch of combos where Gilgamesh will set scales, and one of them will be Ragnarok, one of them will be Apocalypse. You'll summon Apocalypse, and then Ragnarok will summon something else back from the graveyard. There's a bunch of new combos. I think Apocalypse is definitely mandatory. I'll tell you guys what is mandatory and what I put in there. 3 Kepler, obviously mandatory. It's the Stratos of your deck. And then 3 Copernicus. Copernicus is not mandatory. It depends on what type of version of the deck you want to play. But there are a bunch of 2-card combos, and I wanted to have as many 2-card combos in this deck. This deck is notorious for having only 3 4-card combos, and those are just not viable in a competitive scene. I wanted to make this deck as competitive as possible, and there's so many different iterations with Copernicus, Lamia, Copernicus, DD Ghost, Kepler with either the Swirl Slime or Lamia or Ghost. Bunch of 2-card iterations where you could end on 2 negates, and that's never been seen before in DDDs. DDDs have always required bare minimum 3 combo pieces, such as your Swirl Slime, Necro Slime, or Lamia to make a big board. But now there are a few combos that we do have that are just 2 cards, and I think that's very good to see. And then one other Pendulum we have to play. You have to play Savant Thomas. There's a bunch of combos with Savant Thomas where you can add Kepler back or add Copernicus back or Pendulum Summon because of its scale. And Thomas is just good in general, and sometimes you'll search out Thomas going second, because Thomas is really good when you're going second into boards, because you have the option to make your Kali Yuga your rank 8, and that's the only rank 8 we're playing. We're not really focused on that many rank 8s in this version of the deck, so no Hope Harbinger, no multiple Thomas or any of the other level 8 DDs. Bare minimum, you have to play at least 1 Thomas. It depends if you play other XYZs, if you want to play multiple Thomas, but I don't think Thomas is good going first, and this is a very strictly going first deck. Then the normal monsters, the effect monsters, 3 Swirl Slime, the best monster in the deck, you have to play 3. Then 3 Necro Slime, it fuses in the graveyard. This is one of the combo pieces. All of your hands require you to have these these combinations of 2 to 3 different cards, so you should just max out on all the good ones. And then 3 Lamia. Lamia is freaking insane now. Ever since Needle Fiber has come out, Lamia brings this deck to a whole entire new dimension. There's just so many different combinations and things you can do. We have 2-card combos now because Needle Fiber and Gilgamesh are cards now. We've never had that in DDs. 2-card combinations were just so shit before, but now you could actually end on Savage Dragon, Siegfried. If you have Kepler with Lamia or any iterations like that, Kepler Swirl Slime, you could end on Savage Dragon and Siegfried, and I think that's a very crazy thing to do. And then one new thing, this is definitely not standard, but 3 DD Ghost, you have to play 1, bare minimum 1. I would recommend at least 2, because most of the DD decks are playing Pot of Desires, and you just can't afford to lose this card, because so many of your combos is going to require Needle Fiber to summon DD Ghost and get your graveyard stack, so you could keep comboing, keep banishing things. Apocalypse requires you to banish 2 DDs from graveyard, so you'll want DD Ghost to bring materials into the graveyard, and DD Ghost also, when it's banished, brings a material from your banish pile back into the graveyard. This is your resource play. Gilgamesh is now such a good card for this deck, because you set up your big 2-3 soft lock negate board of Siegfried or Savage Dragon, whatever you want it to be, and then you also have follow-up. You'll have 2 scales up and a follow-up in graveyard, and I think that's crazy now. I do think this deck is really good. You guys definitely need to check it out, but try 3 DD Ghost. I think DD Ghost is crazy, and it synergizes with the allures. It helps everything. And then we're playing 1 Hand Trap. There were so many different ways to build this deck. I chose to play only 3 hand traps, but there's a very specific reason why we're playing hand traps. In most combo decks, I don't recommend people playing hand traps, but in this deck, DDs, Ash Blossom is not just only a interrupt, but it's a combo piece. If you ever have Swirl Slime or Necro Slime with Ash Blossom, you still have your full DD combo with 2 negates and your full setup with your scales. And the only reason that happens is because you can just normal summon Ash Blossom and make your Needle Fiber, and Needle Fiber will grab your Lamia or Ghost, whichever one you want. So I think Ash Blossom is crazy in this deck because it is essentially a hand trap and a combo piece. I think I could see like people trying to play even more hand traps that are tuners, but any tuner with 2 of your engine cards will give you your full combo just because you can normal summon your tuner and keep going into Needle Fiber. Needle Fiber allows this deck to have so many different ways to play. But those are all the monsters. Then spells. 1 for 1, mandatory, one of the best cards. This is also part of a bunch of 2-card combos. 1 for 1 plus any engine piece is usually a 2-card combo. 3 Call by the Grave because the deck is unfortunately very susceptible to hand traps and this deck. One of the biggest issues for this deck, and Call by the Grave doesn't even deal with it, is Nibiru. Nibiru literally destroys this deck, and there was so many things I tested to try to deal with that, but I really don't think building it in any way can actually stop us from like being destroyed by Nibiru. It's something we have to accept. There's a few combo decks out there that do just get destroyed by Nibiru. Rocket is a combo deck that also the same thing happens. So I think it's just something you have to accept. Maybe when Designator comes out, it'll be a little different, but 3 Call by the Grave for sure. At least deal with all the other hand traps that you can deal with. But if it isn't Nibiru, I do think this deck can play out of almost every other hand trap. But Call by is still necessary because some of your hands are a little funky if you don't have it. Then 2 Pot of Desires. I wanted to play 3, but as you can see, the deck is so tight. Maybe you could drop 1 Ghost for 3 Pot of Desires. It all depends. But a lot of times, you don't want to activate Pot of Desires right away if you have your combo pieces, because you want your Apocalypse to always be in deck so you can set it off on with your Gilgamesh. And if you lose your Apocalypse, your combos become significantly weaker, and like you won't be able to set scales as easy as you could before. So I recommend whenever you guys do have like the combo already in your hand, don't activate Desire, just go for the combo and activate Desires after. Try to get something else, maybe an Ash Blossom or a Call by the Grave. But I think Pot of Desires is still necessary, and I think Pot of Desires is crazy when you're going second just because you need the extra cards to try to break the field. 3 Allure of Darkness to try to help the consistency, and there's so many darks, it's not an issue. Almost everything's a 3 of, besides the 2 Pendulum Scales. And then the Contract. 3 Dark Contract with the Gate, 1 Swamp King, and then 1 Contract with the Witch. There was a version of the deck that I was testing for so long where I was playing multiple Swamp Kings just because turboing out the rank 6 for DDs, I'll get onto it in a bit in the extra deck, is definitely one of the best monsters. It's one of the counters you have to Nibiru. I really wanted to find a way to like turbo out that monster, but it just was not good. I think you could just get around with playing with 1, but this card I could definitely see 2, 3 of it. But that's the main deck. Let's get on with the extra deck. And like I said, the most important part about this deck is your extra deck. The whole setup, your whole main deck is dedicated towards what your extra deck is. And I can see so many people playing so many different cards, and there's not just one way to build this deck, but I try to build this deck as competitive as possible. I didn't want to focus on the giant board that like a lot of times I will not be getting this giant board with like 3-4 negates on the field. A lot of times I'll just have enough cards to put two negates onto the field, a soft lock, and then keep grinding with the opponent. And I think that's a route that a lot of people should be taking, because this deck can grind as long as you don't blow your whole hand out onto the field to turn 1. So the only rank 8 we play, the DDD Duo Dawn King Kali Yuga, you have to play this one. The other rank 8s, I would only play other rank 8s if you played other things, like maybe you played the level 8 Fusion, Beowulf, or like more Thomas, or like there's another level 8 DD. But for the moment being, we're not focused on rank 8s. This is the only one you need to crack any field, and turn 1, we're never going to make a rank 8. Rank 6, DD Wave King High Season, one of the best cards. I would say this is the best boss monster in the extra deck. I would have loved to figure out like more ways to try to turbo out this card, because turboing out this card in the deck I think is definitely a route you could take, because this card by itself is 2 negates, because it's not once per turn to negate. And when it goes to graveyard, you add a Dark Contract. So not only is it 2 negates, it's also follow-up, very easy to make. So I think this is definitely a staple. Most of your combos, if you can make him, you try to make him. Then the fusions. Yeah, but there's only 3 fusions. This deck is just too tight, man. Like, the extra deck is that just needs so much like cutting here there. You have to like really just get to the bare minimum cards, and this is the bare minimum fusions you could play. You can't go any lower. You could definitely go higher, but I just couldn't fit everything in, and I'm playing a bunch of synchros that you like. A bunch of these 2-card combinations that require you to play synchros. So the DDD Flame High King Genghis. This is a relatively new. It's the same effect as Genghis. It's gonna revive one when you summon it. To make it, you have to use a level 5 or higher DD. You don't usually go into it turn 1, but this is definitely good into fields, into back row. So the two Genghis, all of your combos are going to require you to summon at least two Genghis most of the time, and sometimes you'll be using both of them to make your XYZ. But that's literally the bare minimum you could go. And now the synchros, we're playing some interesting things, and we're not playing one specific card that I know a lot of people are going to be playing, and I'll explain why we aren't. But we're playing the Crystron Grandrax. I really don't know how to say this name, but you kind of have to play a level 9 synchro just because there are it lets you do a 2-card combination in this deck. Any combination of Copernicus with Lamia or Ghost lets you set up this card on the opponent's turn because you'll summon Shooting Riser and you'll have the 2 monsters to synchro into this. Most of the time, your 2-card combinations are not that strong unless you open Kepler, but Copernicus lets you set up this card, so I definitely do think you should definitely play this. If you guys want to see the combos later on, I'll make another video for all the 2-card combinations, but this deck I want to really revolve around 2-card combinations because that's the easiest way to make it really good. There's 3-card combinations, obviously, and there's still going to be 4-card combinations, but 2 cards are definitely like the bare minimum that I always want to see. Then another synchro monster, Borolo Savage Dragon. This card has really just taken over the spot of Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. And I know a lot of people are going to ask me why I'm not playing Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. And there's a few reasons why I'm not. But mainly, anytime you could go for Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, you should definitely just go for Savage Dragon because it allows for you to negate whatever you want. And it's easier to make. The only requirement is to have a link in graveyard. And because of the way our extra deck is set up, we will always have a link in the graveyard. You'll always be making the Savage Dragon on the opponent's turn with your Shooting Riser or your Formula Synchron. But I definitely think Savage Dragon is mandatory, and I think it could take the slot of Crystal Wing because I don't see myself ever choosing Crystal Wing over Savage. Yeah, some of my hands where I have the 3-4 card combinations, I could go for Savage and Crystal Wing, but there's no reason to do that because instead of doing that, you could just go for Savage, your XYZ, and Siegfried, which is amazing board. So I really don't think Crystal Wing is that good. One of the arguments I did see is Crystal Wing is a wind and it makes it so your field cannot be super polyed. So I don't know how important that is. I don't think super poly is that important right now. I don't think it's that in the meta, but like that is one thing to note. But that is why I'm not playing Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon because Savage Dragon it just felt like an infinitely better Crystal Wing to me. And then the one Siegfried, almost every soft lock you're going to make is going to have Siegfried on the field. Alexander is also another card I thought about cutting because I don't think you really go to level 7 synchros. Alexander, always in the previous iterations of the deck, it would help you pivot into Crystal Wing, but there is no Crystal Wing in the extra deck as you can see. There's still a few combos with Alexander where you could it helps keep climbing, but I don't know. I could honestly see it cutting it. Like there's a few other extra deck monsters that I really do want to fit into this extra deck. But then the Shooting Riser Dragon and the Formula Synchron, these are 2 cards that you have to play because your Crystal Needle Fiber will be summoning these depending on what your combination of cards are. If you summon Riser Dragon, it usually means you have something like a Kepler on field to synchro with, and you'll just make your Savage Dragon on the opponent's turn. And most of the time, you'll also be making Formula Synchron. You get a draw, and you do the same thing. But usually, whenever you have Needle Fiber, it's gonna pivot you into your Savage Dragon. So these cards both just help you make the Savage Dragon on the opponent's turn. And then the links. One Gilgamesh, I wanted to play more. Gilgamesh is freaking crazy. I love this card. This card is definitely a good card in this deck. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. I think this deck is very playable, so much more playable than before, and I'm happy to see the deck actually get real support. Then Cross Sheep is just generic as hell. When any deck that can fusion summon, just play Cross Sheep because it just helps you link climb, and there's a few combos, 3-card combos that require you to have Cross Sheep. And the combo that I told you guys about where you need Ash Blossom and 2 other combo pieces, that the only reason why we could do the full DD combo is because Cross Sheep will go into Cross Sheep, revive our Ash Blossom, and go into Needle Fiber after. And then the Crystron Needle Fiber or Halki Fiber X, whatever you want to call it, one of the cards that really is bringing this deck back. Insane card. It makes your Lamia, your Ghost, your Ash Blossom actual combo pieces. And then the final Link monster, why are we playing Link Kuriboh? The only reason why we're playing Link Kuriboh is there's a few 2-card combinations where you have to play Link Kuriboh because your Kepler will go into Link Kuriboh and you'll need a Link monster in graveyard for your Savage Dragon to equip. If you don't have Link Kuriboh, then you can't do any of these 2-card iterations such as Kepler with Swirl Slime or Lamia. If you have those combinations, you need the Link Kuriboh in your extra deck to make sure that Savage Dragon has something to equip. That is the only reason, but I think, like I said, we're going to make our extra deck cater towards 2-card combos because 2-card combos just are broken. And then let's get on to the side deck. Very generic side deck. You guys can change it around however you guys want. I have some good cards in here. DD Crow is really insane right now and synergizes with the Allure. Then 3 Kaijus and 3 Radiants. 3 Nibiru's. I think Nibiru's just nuts right now. It has to be on everybody's mainer side. 3 Dark Ruler. This deck loses to Dark Ruler, and you need Dark Ruler to crack other combo decks. There's a few ways that this deck actually can play around Dark Ruler. Game 2 and 3, I highly recommend you guys search Contract with the Witch, because Contract with the Witch has a little trick to play around Dark Ruler. And then 3 Judgment to try to stop their Dark Ruler and anything else whenever you guys go first. But guys, this is the DD list. Let me know what you guys think. I know like there's some weird things in there. I know the Crystron's in there. Like I'm sure a lot of people have not tested these cards, and a lot of people play Crystal Wing. But I love this deck. I think this is a very competitive deck. Definitely give it a shot. Let me know what you guys think, and let me know if you guys have any other combos that you guys think are like worth trying out. Stay tuned. Subscribe for more.